Mrs. Bethune had decided that you were going to be one of the first...
Mrs. Bethune decided that.
Right. Mm-hmm. That you were going to be one of the first 40 African-American women, young women, to go into this military corps.
Yes.
Now, how did she tell you that?
She told me that one day, one summer day. I came up to Washington. I had to wait 2 days. I had no place to stay. That all sticks out of my mind. I did go to the Y, and they took me in. But when I finally got to see her, which was the next day around noon, I think she came in from a meeting or something, she sat down with me and she began to talk about her fears. In fact, she cried. She had had some disappointment, and I was not a part of it, and she didn't share it with me. But she was deeply concerned that black women didn't seem to latch on, you know?
Latch on?
Latch on to whatever it was she was trying to do. And, you know, that is a disappointing thing. I had it in the Army. The girls didn't see it, say, well, I don't want to be in no trouble. I said, but the book says that's wrong. And that doesn't mean anything to people who, by virtue of their circumstances, just can't see clearly common sense things of government, of life in general in the community. And so you have to work around it. That's what I've learned, is you have to work around some things.
And she was sitting there, and she had obviously gone through this disappointment, whatever it was.
Well, yeah.
And she was tearing up, but then she started talking to you
Yeah,
her plans for your future.
That's right. Yeah, she said, you got to do this, you got to do that, and what she was doing, and that there was going to be some education legislation. I couldn't fathom education, you know, legislation, but it was. The various bills for education grants and all that kind of stuff, which really included a lot of people, me for one. And before I got to that, though, then I went in the Army.
Well, now, when she said to you, I want you to do this, I want you to go into the Army.
Yeah.
How did you feel about that?
How did I feel?
Yeah.
Well, I tell you what I said to her. Well, I have talked to my mother about that. That was my soul. In other words, I really wanted to get it off of me. But the more I got into it, and when I talked to Mama didn't seem a bit surprised. She didn't want me to go, but she thought women would have to go.
Now, why were you, obviously, you weren't all that sure that this was a good idea for you.
No.
Why not?
Well, I didn't know what it entailed, and there was still the wives' old tale that the women were being brought into the service to serve as concubines for the men. They were going to send them to Huachuca, you know, where most black men were sent in large numbers and that kind of thing, and that would be our function, to be their mates. Well, of course, no woman would want to come into a situation like that. And it took education from leaders and others to back down those kind of negative notions.
But it turned out that what Mrs. Bethune wanted to do was, in fact, to begin desegregating
the whole thing,
the entire military.
That's where she was.
And you were going to be part of that vanguard, the first 40 black
43,
women.
Yes, that's it.
Who were going to be coming in with whites as officers to be trained.
Yeah, and that's the way it turned out. She and Miss Harvey, Miss Roosevelt, and there were several other women, leading women around the country, governors' wives and whatnot, who worked hard to counter the notion that we were going to be out there to be mates for the men. And that would be our major function. But in the first place, there would have been enough women to go around. True, they sent a contingent to Fort Huachuca, but there wouldn't have been nearly enough. All the men in Fort Huachuca.
But you got sent to Des Moines?
Yes.
Was it
Fort
Fort
Des
Des Moines?
our way.
Uh-huh. Well, tell me what happened when you first got there. Were you welcomed?
Well, men, no. Men, sometimes you just got to act like a man, like the others acting. And they didn't want to be there. They didn't want to be assigned there to train us. And that was their mission. In 90 days to really have us ready to turn out in a uniform. And I guess some of them, as I have heard later, resented it. They wanted to be going on to the military duty. And this can turn out to be the hardest military duty they had ever conceived, But what they didn't count on was women are determined. And we stayed up late nights studying those manuals and making it so we would understand. The hardest part was the footwork out there in that cold weather. Even in August it's cold in Des Moines, out there in the woods where we were housed and where the barracks were. It was very uncomfortable, and the parade ground hadn't been worked on, I'm sure, in years. And it had gopher holes on it, and girls were spraining their ankles. I sprained mine. And you just were in bad shape. I said many nights, I want to go home. That's what I want to do. Mildred Carter said, yeah, I want to go too, Johnson. I want to go too. I'm ready to go today. I said, well, we can't go today now. We can go, we've got to make plans. I always believe in making some plans.